There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. We are so excited that you are here with us on this fine Thursday morning. I know that right now we're at a time where there's so much demand for our attention on different screens, whether it's Netflix or other Zoom calls. So we're really excited that you're choosing to hang out with us this morning. And I promise we're going to have a great conversation. My name is Pamela Barba. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a brand strategist and mindset coach. I spent a little bit of time in the startup ecosystem, so I'm really excited for this conversation. This is something that is very near and dear to me. So I do want to give a quick shout out before I introduce or I let our amazing panelists introduce to Tequeria. Tequeria is the largest community of Latinx tech professionals in the US. As of July, there's over 10,000 members, which is a massive milestone. And if you identify as Latinx, I highly encourage you to look up Tequeria. They have an amazing Slack community that I know I have benefited from, and I invite you to join as well. So now to kick us off, I would love for each of you to say your name, to say your pronouns, and to just tell us your role in a brief summary of what you do at this moment. And for the people in the audience, we will be taking questions at the end, so feel free to, jot them down, drop them in the chat, and we'll get those to those later. So anybody that wants to kick us off, you can go ahead and start.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and start. I am Shyla Nieves-Burry. I'm the founding and managing partner for Zane Venture Fund. My pronouns are she, her. I am investing in companies I'm investing in companies who are creating technical solutions, primarily here in the Southeast. My day-to-day role is talking to investors who hopefully will invest in our fund, and working with entrepreneurs in terms of deal flow. So really happy to be here to talk about the Latinx experience within venture and within the entrepreneurial community.
Thank you so much.
All right. I'll go next. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Pamela, for leading this panel. I'm very excited. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, right? This is Thursday, so I'm excited to not just share, my experience, but also ideas. So my name is Alejandra Johnson. I have spent the last, I would say, 15 plus years in technology. And what that means essentially is I've worked with many companies, small, medium, and large, and help them go from ideation to execution. My main practice is in software development and product development.
Beautiful. And I'm Stephanie Diaz. You can't see me, but you can hear my voice. And in true Latinx fashion, I'm having some technical difficulties, but resilience is something that we have in spades. So not going to let it slow any of us down. I'm the founder of Powered by Verve, where I am an investor relations strategist. So helping startup founders position themselves for capital. I'm proud to be an advisor for the Zane Venture Fund. I'm proud to do the screening and due diligence for one of Atlanta's most active angel investor groups. And a lot of that work really influences how I support founders as they share their voice and position themselves for capital.
Amazing. So many powerhouse people here today. So I would love to learn a little bit more about your startup journey. We're not born knowing what the startup ecosystem is. There's a point in your life where you found out it was a thing and chose to enter it. So I would love to hear more about that, your beginning story.
So I'll go first. So for me, I'm only here because an entrepreneur trusted me, and that's just the bottom line. An entrepreneur was looking for capital, and because he was ready to scale his company. And so someone contacted me. They knew I was really good at networking and connecting, and offered me the opportunity to help him. And so without an entrepreneur, I'll just be very, very pointed. I would not be sitting here in front of you guys. And so I've been an entrepreneur all of my life. I'm sure like most of my Latina sisters have been. We find a problem we want to solve, and then we go out and set about doing that. So I've spent 20 plus years working with major organizations, but I always had a side gig. I never knew that full-time entrepreneurship was for me. And I think that was partly because of, the dependence on a paycheck, on a regular paycheck. And entrepreneurship may not allow that all the time. And so, but I knew that I had the gift to take something from beginning to end because I had been doing it for companies, for 20 plus years. And so 2018, I decided to launch my own company called The Bernie Experience, where I was going to create these amazing experiences for women, but also support small and none businesses and nonprofits. And so was in that journey. 3 months in, I had 6 clients. I was doing very well. And then I got this offer in March 2018 to source investors for the startup. Spent time 7 months doing that, along the way doing research, finding out about the inequities within venture capital, talking to amazing entrepreneurs who may not be ready for venture capital yet, but definitely worth investing in. And so was able to get this entrepreneur to, a significant term sheet, and started doing these events around the country, starting in New York. And so long story short, the investor dropped out. I decided I'm going to solve this problem myself. So set on a journey to start a fund. I did that for about a year, traveling the country, having events, being in rooms where they were talking about $200 billion funds, and my fund at that time was $5 million. I didn't care. I wanted to get the knowledge. And so I launched my fund last November on the heels of an investment before I had even dry on my paperwork. And so we went into 2020 with the wind beneath our wings, right? And COVID decided, no, we're going to do something different. And so, but anyway, we still doubled down on our thesis. We didn't let COVID stop us. We are continuing to fundraise. We just made our first investment, which we announced yesterday. So really excited about that. And so that tells me while I started from point zero to fast forward 2 years later, we have a first investment. I have a fully formed fund. I have a group of advisors who are very smart in helping me along the way. So that's my journey. And I'm really happy that I didn't say no to that entrepreneur.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right. Well, I share my bit different than yours, Sheila. But that is to say, I'm originally from Peru, where I graduated with a bachelor's in systems engineering. I started writing code when I was in my junior year, and essentially what I decided to do is I decided to sell what I was writing, meaning, all the programs and systems that I was creating to my friends, so meaning other students. And I thought I had a great idea right back then because I was selling them. And the thing that I didn't realize that just like me, they were broke as well. So that didn't work so well. So after I did that for a while, I actually decided that writing code is not what I wanted to do for a living. So I went to do my MBA in London and spent quite a lot of time there, not just doing my MBA, but also working in London. After I graduated with my MBA, I decided to move here. So I've been in the US for just about 6 years now. And when I moved here, again, I arrived here with essentially 2 suitcases, and I didn't know anybody, didn't have any friends. All my family is in Peru. And what I decided to do is essentially organize a program. I'm sure you guys have heard of a 3-day startup, which is essentially you help other founders and people that want to start a company, either code or get from ideation to execution in 3 days. So that was a great way for me to not just help others achieve their goals, meaning start something, but also it was a great opportunity for me to meet people because I had to reach out to hundreds of mentors, investors, you name it, all, from investors to mentors to people that actually wanted to be part of the program. So once I did that, that was back in 2014, I launched this program and it had a great success. I went through the whole process of helping others, just, having a value proposition and actually becoming part of the program. I selected 5 of those, 15 of those founders, and together we worked for 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, we had 3 companies that we actually had a value proposition. They were also writing code already, a couple of them. And that is to say that also that gave me the opportunity to meet people, right? That day on the spot, as I was talking with one of those mentors, he was also starting a company. So I was lucky enough that he actually hired me on the spot. So I was lucky that I got to meet amazing people. But that was just one part of, my journey as I arrived here and I got to meet people. The other part is that I also decided to go into the journey of working with bigger companies. I had opportunity to work at Coca-Cola, Duke Energy, just to get a different perspective. But again, after working there, I went back to the startup community because I absolutely love not just the passion, but the energy and the fact that we're all facing many challenges. And entrepreneurs are the ones that will have great ideas. But I think what matters are people that actually take those ideas and run with them, right? Actually execute on those ideas. So as transition into the startup world again, helping founders launch companies and creating products. And after doing that for, quite a few years, that's what I've been doing for, I would say, the last 6 or so years, just helping founders launch products, companies, and going through the entire journey of creating something or sometimes improving a product.
Amazing.
I love it. And I'll share a little bit about my story. Some of it was intentional and some of it, that like kind of accidental magic that comes along the way. So for me, coming out of my MBA, was looking to get involved in the pharmaceutical industry because I had contacts there that were doing really well. They said, Stephanie, you have to come and do this. And then accidentally landed within a pharmaceutical startup, which is actually the best thing that could have happened for me. I was there 4 years, worked my way up, ended up reporting right into the owner and entrepreneur, and we grew that company to over 100 million in annual revenue. And, being such a small core team, had my hands in multiple facets of that operation. And that, I feel like I had always been entrepreneurial, but that real life experience showed me that I truly did have a hunger for it. And it showed me that I could do it because I had learned so much. But in that moment, I had no clue what my voice would be in the world. I just knew that I wanted to have my own voice in the world, which is kind of funny that you can't see my face because my voice has actually been the thing that has propelled me forward. Fast forward a couple of years and I really had this itch to reinvent my career. And I said, you know what? I don't know why a podcast was calling me. I said, I feel like I could launch a podcast and I feel like I could interview really cool people. And somehow that is going to set the stage for something new. And I didn't know what, and I didn't know how, but I just had that inkling. And so in 2015, I launched a podcast called Mastermind Your Launch. I started out just interviewing small business owners that were inspiring to me, but people started making introductions. You need to interview this person. You need to interview that person. And that is where I got involved in tech startup. Before I knew it, I was interviewing VCs and all of these incredible startup founders. And I had this expanding network in the Atlanta startup space. From there, I started hosting events. I founded an organization for women entrepreneurs called WOA. And through my voice being on stages, I got connected to an opportunity to join a local fintech company as their head of investor relations. And that really catapulted my work in the world of capital. And so, just really a journey of following those inklings, sharing my voice in a big way, feeling worthy enough to share my voice in a big way, and then, doors opening from there.
Amazing. I love how in all of our stories and all of your stories, there's this moment of like, there's an action. Like I did this hackathon and it was scary, or I started this podcast, or I started working with this entrepreneur. And I think it's amazing to see. I'm inspired by women of action, like y'all. I would love to hear about how has your identity, your Latinx identity, your cultural identity affected your startup journey, your journey as an entrepreneur?
I'll hop in on that one. Oh, sorry, Shyla.
No, go ahead.
So, my identity as, as a Latinx founder, and just really embracing my culture has honestly been, it's a very emotional journey. It's very deep for me. Spanish was my first language. I spent my early years in Puerto Rico. Most of my family is still there, but, or very early on, we moved to the suburbs of Atlanta, and my mother, knew English well. She wanted to speak English in the home because she had experienced, some negativity in the States by being, a Latina herself, and she wanted to shield me from that. And so I grew up in a pretty American lifestyle, and truly all along the way, yearning for more Puerto Ricanness in my life. If summers spent at my grandmother's house were my favorite, the food, the culture, the way that people are with each other there, the closeness, the passion that they have in their everyday lives called me. But I felt very separated from it living here. And that was a sad spot for me. And as I started, to gain my visibility in the startup world, I remember very clearly hosting an event. It was my second WOMAIN event. And this woman, a young woman from Brazil, coming up to me afterwards and saying, like, thank you for being such an example for Latinas. And it's been a journey for me. Of course, I want to, serve that community. It's been a journey for me to embrace my worthiness to do that, quite honestly, living here and being so separate from it. But, as I have done that inner work, as I have, gotten more connected to my roots, more connected to this Latinx community, I'm so thrilled to have this platform to give back, to empower, and to be a part of the movement and the shift so that more Latinx founders feel at home here, with success here. Charlie.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank y'all.
So let me start with this. My father is Puerto Rican. My mom and my dad, and this is probably a little personal, but it's just who I am and it's the story. My mom and my dad had, they were very young when they got married. But the one thing, just the few years I spent with my dad are the reasons why you see me here today. My dad was very loving, very caring. There was something that he imparted in me very early on. This Latino man who worked very hard, came home. The only thing that was important to him was that his family was well taken care of. Him and my mom split. I spent all of my life, all of my adult life searching for my dad, all of my young years searching for my dad. But within me, I had this burning desire to Stephanie, even, you had your Latin mom, I had this burning desire to be with my Puerto Rican dad, mainly because I yearned for what happened. I felt like he had given me such confidence so early on. And so I carried that all the way through my life, while also building myself as my own persona, right? And so I think that having that early experience with my dad, not that my mom wasn't caring, but then missing him for years. And so really fought that to get to where I was. And so before I had and I don't know where this is going, but before I had my second child, I refused to go on, move forward with life until I found my dad, right? So I found my dad in 1994. He had gone back to Puerto Rico. There's a long story behind that. But what I realized in finding him was that all of my life I had missed this man who wasn't present, but was there daily with me. And so I took that. I don't speak Spanish. That is one of the biggest things that I have an issue with, because I want to learn the native language. My dad didn't speak Spanish at home to us. And I know that some other Latinos have said that, they tend not to because they didn't want you to have that sort of negativity if you've gone out and you're speaking Spanish. So he didn't speak Spanish to us. And so I missed that opportunity. But what my dad, I think just having this Latin father just propelled me. What I would not do for folks is I would not let him erase him, right? So he wasn't present. My last name was Nieves. They Americanized it to Neves, and I'm like, no, it's Nieves. I kept pushing the fact that I'm Puerto Rican, right? No, you don't see my father, but I'm Puerto Rican. People would ask me, in Florida, it's big to drive around with the Puerto Rican flag in your car. And I would get stopped by mainly Latin men asking me, why do you have that in your car? Because they didn't recognize me as Puerto Rican. And so for me, I've always fought against the narrative that, just there is no one look of a Latin person. We come in all sort of, shapes, sizes, colors, hues, that sort of thing. And so for me, it's always just trying to say, me getting folks to embrace the fact that I am a Latina. I spoke as a Latina for the first time in 2019. I was invited to a panel by Samsung Next in New York. And I felt so proud that someone finally acknowledged that I'm a Latina. No, I don't look like one. I don't speak Spanish. So those kind of things are like not there. And so, for me, it's important to carry that. So it's with me every day. It's in my work now. Now, Stephanie knows that I say this. I've not lived the life of a Latina or a Latinx person. So I can't say what a Latinx person wants. So I needed someone, in terms of building my team, I needed someone who had lived that experience. And that's where Stephanie is. So I don't come here pretending to know everything that the Latinx population has experienced. I come here as a Black Latina saying, this is my experience, and I'm trying to change that narrative for others. And so that's part of my journey, not only in life, but I bring that to the work as well.
Thank you so much. Your voice and your story is so needed in all of these spaces, Shaila. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing so vulnerably, both of you. I know identity is, Latinx people are very, very diverse. And I hope that everybody can see and hear that in the stories that we are sharing today. Alejandra, would you like to share?
Absolutely. So as I said before, I'm from Peru. I grew up there, right? So I actually decided to move to London to get my MBA, which was, later in life. But that is to say that when I was in Peru and when I moved to London, essentially, when I moved to London, I didn't think of like, okay, I'm changing cultures or I'm a Latina. I wonder how this is going to be. I just went there, and I guess I didn't have enough time to think about, oh, what if the culture is different? What if they treat me differently? I didn't have time to think about that. And quite honestly, I don't think it even happened. I was just one more. And all through my life, I've seen myself as just another person, not necessarily as, I'm a Latina. This is not to say that, doors haven't been closed or anything like that, but this is to say that it is so wonderful to not just bring culture and to other countries. So when I was in London, the same thing, right? I was just one more of them. Sometimes, I will ride the train and I will hear like at least 7 different languages around me. And it was just fascinating. And when I moved here, although there is, I would say, a little less diversity here, especially in Atlanta, I would say that still is, we're all a mix, we're all just people. Although we have diversity here, you can say, we have Hispanic people, Asian people, and all of that. But in a way, we're just people here trying to do something amazing. And I think sometimes we can get lost in terms of that. I didn't realize that, to think of my culture so much that when I was giving a conference once and someone asked me, so what are you exactly, right? And I didn't mention that at the beginning, like I was from Peru. And that stood out to me because I just look at myself as one more person trying to learn from others, trying to teach others. And that is to say, although race is wonderful, we all come in different shapes, colors, and cultures. That is to say that at the end of the day, we're just people, people that the way I see it, that we just want to work with one another and collaborate with one another. I do have great fun in the office sometimes when in my previous office, for instance, they will play music and they will look at me and say like, okay, dance, because I love to dance, of course, as you can imagine. So they will just, play music, and of course I'll be dancing before they even ask me to. But so little things like that people recognize that, as Latinas, we do like certain things. I guess you can call it stereotypes as well. But those things, sometimes they're true, like dancing and things like that. So proud to grow up in Peru, but also very excited to make the US my home. Nowadays, I only go and visit Peru once a year, and I'm just in love with the U.S. There's so many amazing people here, and not just Latinas and Latinos. They're just everyone in general. It has been an amazing opportunity for me.
Thank you all for sharing so much about your perspective. And definitely, as we are such a diverse group, we just have different experiences. So I would love to talk about code switching. And for the people that maybe are not familiar with what code switching is, it means that you have to change the way that you act when you show up in a certain space. So it might be you don't put on red lipstick. It might be you don't put on those earrings. It might be you change the way that you use words. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yes, I love it.
I want to wear red lipstick. I'm going to wear red lipstick because I think, and I'm not saying code switching doesn't exist. It exists. I'm going to be professional in my meeting, but that doesn't mean I can't bring my whole self to the meeting, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I encourage young people: bring your whole self. We have been in a society that says we need to fit in a box, right? Even though we may be around a bit, fit in a square, even though we may be round, that we don't have to do that. As long as you're a professional and you know your work, and again, you guys may have differing opinions. I'm just against this so whole sort of you got to become someone else in order to get someone else to say yes to you. I've even had that question myself. I'm very passionate. You can tell it in my voice. I speak like this all the time. People think I'm upset. No, I'm just talking, right? I can't take that passion away from me. I said to someone that I tend to, I like a lot of like being everywhere. And I said, I want to be able to sit down and just like focus on one thing. That's not Shyla. And so I think we can be who we are without pretending to be someone else to get someone else to say yes to you. Right. I think I've met so many, I've not seen an entrepreneur or founder yet who wasn't qualified for what they were doing, who didn't have everything they needed to start that company, to get it going. They didn't have the capital. That was the thing that was missing. But they had everything they needed. I don't think there's a necessary need to go and be someone else. And so I'm going to wear my hoops. I don't even know if I put lipstick on it. But I'm going to wear them. And these are big and I don't care. It's just who I am. It brings out all of Shyla. I feel good when I'm Shyla in a meeting versus me trying to be someone else. And so I'm against code switching. I know it exists, and I just wish we could get rid of it and allow people to be who they are, as long as we're being professional and we know what we're doing when we enter these rooms. So that's my 2 cents.
Amen. I love it.
Mike. Yes. Would anybody else like to weigh in? Was there a moment that you felt like you had to code switch, or even better, a moment when you decided that you're just not code switching anymore?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You go.
Stephanie. We're like fighting for the microphone. All right, so I'll go. I just wanted to stress what Shyla said, which is that's not sustainable. There is so much that you can pretend, and then at the end of the day, you still got to talk with clients, founders, you name it, and it's not sustainable. It would just gonna take so much energy from you that you will not be able to do that every day. What I would say is that I know I talk about code switching, so I don't do that. I bring my whole self to every meeting, every like where that I go. This is me. But what I would say instead is, so for instance, I had a great opportunity to be part of a board member, and for instance, in this case, they were all men. It's not like that I had to pretend to be somebody else. What I learned instead is that you need to be able to meet people where they are. So this is not pretending to be, somebody else. This is you trying to listen and meeting the other person where they are. So in this case, we were in a board meeting and we're discussing a strategy. How can we scale? Can we enter a different market? In this case, there was no pretending that I was thinking like them, with their years of experience. They've done that many times. Many of them had launched and exit many companies. But instead, it was just meeting them where they are. And I think that's part of being a good leader as well. Not necessarily, pretending that you're somebody else, but just listen and, meet people where they are. I think that's where the magic happens.
Oh, I love that so much. Something that first of all, I want you all to know that I am wearing my bright pink lipstick, even if you can't see it. I brought my whole self today. But yes, I feel like, to Alejandro's point, so many of us, we are on this journey, and there's an element of up leveling. There's an element of changing, moving that glass ceiling, all of that. And so there's an element of putting yourself in situations where you have not been in the past. And so for that, I feel like you do have to have an understanding of the lay of the land where you are currently going, learn enough to be dangerous, and, bring yourself to it. Because as much as there can be a misconception or that imposter syndrome that says that you don't belong, the flip side of that is that you are the most refreshing thing to happen to that room in so long, and they need your energy. So striking that balance of, this is new and I'm entering foreign territory for me, and knowing who you want to be in that, in that area, and what of, the person who you are, really should come forward and shine and be amplified in that. I know for me, as I entered the pharmaceutical industry and I was 22, in that moment, just out of the gate in my career, there was the only Latina, the only woman, and by 20, 30 years, the youngest in the room from the get-go. So I learned really early that I wasn't going to be surrounded by people like me. But I will say that, in the many years that have passed since, it has felt like a blossoming of that. It's more Stephanie that comes out, when I'm in those situations than maybe that 22-year-old version of me was confident enough to reveal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And let me just finish with this. I don't want to give the impression that people shouldn't be prepared, right? I'm not suggesting that at all. When you walk into the room, you should definitely be prepared. And again, I've met many entrepreneurs who had everything they needed, and they still felt somewhat imposter syndrome going into a room. And so preparation is key. The word imposter syndrome bothers me just like the word code switching, because seeing these young people, seeing what they offer, and I don't know who at what point in their life someone told them that they weren't good enough. And so trying to change that mindset within them, saying you don't have to code switch, you don't have to have this imposter syndrome, you have everything you need, walk in there boldly. That's the message that I want to be able to send to the entrepreneurs who come into our care.
Thank y'all. I feel like we could do a whole panel on code switching. So thinking about mentorship, and the question that I had is like how to find the right mentorship. But I would love even to take a step back from that and think like, what's bad mentorship? What's good mentorship? I wonder if y'all have experiences of like, what was something a mentor or somebody that you were following, and then you realize this is not how I want to do this. And then how do you find that person that teaches you how to do something in a way that feels aligned with you?
I feel like mentorship, it's, for me, I know that sometimes people have made introductions to people who, I think in their mind, like, this is a great mentor for Stephanie, but the connection wasn't quite there. I feel like the most genuine mentor relationships develop over time, and a lot of them develop from the side of the mentor first. They have to see something in you that they gravitate towards, and they, want to nurture and take it further. And so that's why I'm such a big believer. You have to have your voice out in the world, because mentors will find you. They will adore your energy. They will buy into your vision, and they will have a roadmap for you, connections, doors that they can open. But it's really about, I feel like the mentor kind of leads that. When they say like, go out and find a mentor, I've never gone out and sought out, a mentor, but I have had so many come to me proactively because they have seen my work in the world. And so I feel like you have to be visible. You have to be vulnerable, and, and you have to put yourself out there and know that support is going to find you along the way.
Well, I have something to say to the point, Stephanie. So you say you haven't looked for mentors; they usually find you, and I think that's a great thing. I would say that I've looked for mentors. I've when I arrived here, I sent hundreds of messages, and I was lucky enough to get responses. Not hundreds, but I got a good response, and I essentially contacted people on LinkedIn. I looked at the profile. For some of them, they had a role that I wanted to have. And I've been very successful when it comes to just following up with them. I met my first mentor through LinkedIn, and he was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, from just getting ready from the transition of moving from another country to here, to getting to know other people and starting a career here. He was extremely helpful. Now, what I would say is that at different parts of your career, your life, I would say you need different types of mentors. So that is just as essential. So thinking of where you are and seeking for that kind of mentorship is just as crucial. I remember when I arrived, I was looking for a very different type of mentors. And nowadays, actually, that has changed. And what I will also say is that it's not just seeking for mentorship; it's also giving back. So you have to put yourself out there, like Stephanie said, and also I would suggest to pick someone to mentor. We are all hungry for knowledge, and we have a mix of people. Some of them are, introverts, and they won't ask. But I think it is valuable for us to at least offer the help. But in summary, it depends on where you are in your career. I look for very different types of mentors depending on what I want to learn. And again, I also like to give back. Nowadays, quite honestly, I'm finding quite a lot of people that I want to follow and learn from podcasts. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with how leaders lead. They have an amazing set of leaders, from CEOs to young founders. So there you have a huge set of leaders that you can reach out to. But also, so that's a great set, right? But I would say to also take the list and look at what you need, what you would like to learn, think about what you want to give back. But also, there's so many people that you can learn from. You don't necessarily have to learn from a CEO or a founder. There's so many people there that are doing amazing things. And we are very lucky now because we have, social channels that are we can just reach out to them by phone sometimes, right? We have Twitter, we have Instagram, and in this case, you have to learn what's their best channel. Some people like to just be on Instagram. So start, learning from them and see what works for them. So that's my take in terms of mentorship, but it does matter in terms of what you need to define what is it that you're seeking. You need to be very clear, because mentors, just like us, we do have limited time. We do want to help, but we have limited time. So being specific in terms of what you're seeking is very important.
Yes, that's fire. Having a very specific ask is so important.
So I don't think I've ever had a formal sort of mentor relationship. I grasp like information from all kind of folks and sort of go from there. I will talk about Sig Mosley, who started out as a mentor relationship. I reached out to him, of course, because of the opportunity that I had on the table in terms of investing in this particular company. And it turned into a mentor relationship, but I think he only got serious once he saw that I was serious. Once he saw every time he talked to me, there was an improvement from the last time he talked to me. And so that's how our relationship began. So it's never been a formal relationship. It's just constantly meeting with him and talking to him. But I want to read you guys this that I found on LinkedIn and shared on Twitter, which I think is very, very important. If you're over 45 and don't have an under 30 mentor, not mentee, mentor, then you're going to miss fundamental shifts in thinking that are happening. And I say that because I have two young ladies that I consider mentors. They're much younger than me, but their sort of outlook and perspective is totally different from mine. And so they've been able to actually help me. So I just want to say mentorship doesn't have an age, right? I have an older person who's a mentor, and I have a younger person who's a mentor, two people who are mentors. So it can go either way. I think those relationships are very important. What I want to say, and I just recently had a young woman who I've been just talking to ask me to have a formal mentor relationship with her. And of course I had to basically say that, I'm fundraising right now, give me some time. But I was really honored by that. And I think that's how we need to treat those relationships. She sees something in me that she wants, me to mentor her. And so I respect that. For mentees, I think it's important that you gotta stay engaged, right? We, those mentors, we get busy, we fall off or whatever, but we expect you to call us back to the forefront and say, hey, I haven't heard from you. We had a meeting scheduled, blah, blah, blah. When can we touch base again? Don't let us off the hook if we've agreed to that relationship. So it's incumbent upon you to stay in front of that mentor and get them, keep them engaged with you. So I think it's a two-way relationship. It just doesn't go one way, is what I want to say. So.
Yes, incredible. And I love what you said about the youths. We have so much to learn from the younger generations, and I think that's an incredible thing to point out. So I want to switch gears a little bit and start getting more into the nuts and bolts of things. So Alejandra, specifically, I wanted to ask you about, as you're building businesses, products, talk to me about Lean Startup. What is it? How can it be leveraged in the startup ecosystem as founders?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So every time I meet with a founder, they're always like, before we even start talking about the problem, they're like, okay, but how can I get funded, right? Where is the money? And I think what we miss is the essential question, which is what problem are we trying to solve, right? And how can we go through the loop of build, measure, and learn faster? Not because we just want to launch something that doesn't work, but because the faster we go through the loop, the more we can learn. And that means that we have to be implementing, whether it's third-party applications to gather data, or whether you're just writing that in a piece of paper, but it's learning what you're doing and improving that. So going back to your question, which is, essentially what is Lean Startup? And, I teach this not just to other funders, but actually at Georgia Tech as well. And essentially it's quite simple. Really, it's trying to learn from your mistakes in a short amount of time. At least that's how I put it. There are many, concepts there, but essentially as you think of the stages of a company, which, at this point I'm going to define it as, you go from an idea to prototype to launch to traction. Then you of course have to monetize, right? So let's not forget about that. And then you grow. Now many companies, can go through that cycle in different ways, but the essential part is that there is, you have to start with the idea, right? What is the idea? What problem are you trying to solve? And in this case, talk with customers, right? Talking with customers should be like almost the first step. It's like, what is the problem? What are their pain points? And essentially, not necessarily listen to their solutions, because they're always going to have a solution, trust me. And you don't want to go and blindly build that solution. But you want to listen to their problems. And once you've learned what the problems are, you go and prototype. And then again, I'm not asking to go and build an application at this point. I'm just asking you to understand the problem. So in this case, you have developed a hypothesis, you talk with customers, right? You understand the problem, then you prototype. This can be a mock-up, a clickable mock-up. In one of my, I'll give you a quick example, Tommy Run, we actually did that. We just created a mock-up, a clickable mock-up, and asked customers to actually use it. We didn't tell them where they were supposed to click. We wanted to see how easy it was to use. So usability testing and testing that with customers is just as essential. But this is to say that you don't have to build an application in the prototype stage, which is, I don't know what that was. In this case, you just in the, bare bones, just build whether it's a mock-up, whether it's wireframes, and just get that to the hands of the customer and see how they respond. Now, the next part is this is almost my favorite part, which is you implement, whether you're writing this on a piece of paper or you're tracking this through an Excel sheet. If you're a little bit more sophisticated, of course, I would recommend to implement third-party applications to gather that data in terms of what is it that is working and what is not, right? So again, prototype, you have your metrics now, and this is the crucial part because that helps you make better decisions. So in this case, right, I'll give you an example. If you're building something in technology, let's say an application, you're learning from your customer not necessarily, not so much about the user experience, but what is working, right? Whether they need the service, the product. Once you have those numbers, that helps you make a better decision, which is at this stage, this is your chance to either pivot or continue, right? And pivot, I'm not saying that for instance, you were selling, at the beginning, you were selling electronics, and now you're gonna be selling yoga pants. That's not what I mean by pivot. What I mean by pivot is that you still have the same vision, but your strategy in terms of how to get to the vision is gonna be different. So then you pivot, and once you have, either change and make adjustments, then that's where, you start like building traction. In that stage, I would say that's where product market fit happens. All of this sounds, like step 1, 2, and 3. To be quite honest, all of this happens in parallel. You got to be able to move through all those stages in parallel. And as you are monetizing, then you start growing. But this is to say that, a lot of people ask, so when do you know that you have arrived? How do you know you got there? And to be quite honest, that's what I love startups, because I do think that a startup is it's a bunch of experiments. So it's not like you ever arrive. There's no this place where you arrive and you can just relax. That's never the case. It's constantly adjusting your product, your service, and changing, testing, coming back to whatever you were trying before, in really just making, whether it's you're innovating, whether you're disrupting a market, you name it, but it's making decisions and going through the loop faster.
Amazing. I love Lean Startup. There's the book called Lean Startup, if any of you are interested in digging deeper into this. Stephanie and Shyla, from the investor side, what does it look like for Latinx to raise capital? Like, what, we talked about, Shyla, you said, when people walk in and they're prepared and they know their stuff. Can you hear me? I can't hear you, but y'all, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay.
It seems muted, Sheila.
Oh no, maybe. Okay, maybe we'll get her back in. So Stephanie, Shyla mentioned like when founders come in and they're prepared, and I think that preparedness comes from following this Lean Startup, knowing who your customer is, knowing what problem you're solving, showing that you have product market fit. What does this look like from your end?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when, I think that there's an element when a startup is pitching to investors, so often they feel like they are, articulating their idea. And yes, that's a big part of it, but you also have to understand how investors identify the right opportunities for them. And it's so much more than the idea. Yes, there is absolutely product market fit. There's also a fit within that in specific investors' portfolio. What are they interested in specifically? Sometimes a no has nothing to do with the viability and future success of that, of that startup. It's just not a good fit for that investor. There's so many nuances going on behind the scenes. And so for me, there's a lot of great questions that startups can ask to understand investors specifically, so that they can understand if the feedback being given to them is about the startup, viability and how the success story is appearing from that other side, or if it's just not a fit with that specific investor or investor group. And so I feel like that's a big piece that can sometimes be missed.
Amazing. That is really great insight. Shyla, I think we can hear
I'm
you.
back.
Back.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. So we're talking about what does it look like from the investor side when a founder is approaching you. And Stephanie was just talking about how, there are different things to consider. It's not just about your idea, but it's about the investment portfolio. Stephanie and Shyla, like, what are things that if I'm a founder, how can I know who you invest in, how you invest, like if that's the right fit?
So research is key. Just because a person is an investor doesn't mean that they're investing in your specific industry. So if you have a SpaceX company and I'm investing in CPG, that's not a fit. And so I think it's key that entrepreneurs research the type of investor who invests in their particular industry. You will find a lot that folks are industry agnostic, right? So they're looking at every industry, but maybe they're not looking at your stage. So that's also important, right? Are they looking at the seed, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B? All of that matters. So there is this assumption that because I'm an investor, I'm investing in everything. For us at Zane, we are investing in diverse entrepreneurs and teams. You have to fit that sort of, and that means a lot for a lot of people, but it's on our website. So go to our website, do some research and find out if you're, and that's where I send people, you can connect with me on Twitter, wherever. I'm going to send you to our website to make sure you meet the criteria first so that we don't go through this loop of, oh, but I reached out to Zane, they didn't respond back, or they didn't connect with me. It may not have been a fit, or maybe it's because we're doing, we're working on getting ourselves up to the point where we start talking to companies about investment. It's a process. It's not a one and done. It's the person that we just invested in, I spent a year with this entrepreneur, one entire year advising and mentoring her. And so that's time that we've given in to this particular entrepreneur, and we wanted to be able to invest in. That's not going to be every scenario. We won't spend a year trying to get to know a company, but I'm saying it's just incumbent on the entrepreneur to do the research as well. Know who you don't. There are lots of us out there, but do you want this person to be on your cap table for 10 years? So make sure you know who we are, right? Do you want to understand the dynamics of that investor to make sure that that's a person that you want to be connected with? It's a partnership when you start to invest into a company or you take investments from an investor. It's a long-term partnership. And so I think, I just need entrepreneurs to expect that things don't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes the right investor, but do your homework, do the research to make sure you're talking to the right investor so you don't spin your wheels. It happens on our side too, Pamela. Like I was talking to large institutions before I started talking to the particular investor who would invest in our fund. And so it goes the same for the entrepreneur, to do the research. But I will say for the Latinx community, one thing to be excited about is that for us, you have someone, Latinx, we're focused on the Latinx community. That's one of our diverse groups that we're meeting with. So you come to Zane Fund, you have a group of people who are already bought into the idea that diversity is a strength. So you don't have to come and sell anything to us but your company and your product. And so I just want people to know that our doors are open for a lot of folks. And we're here to support the entrepreneur through the life cycle of their company. It's just not a check and go away. We're taking a 360 approach to investing in companies.
Incredible. And thank you for opening those doors. So when I was a startup entrepreneur and I was talking to investors and trying to figure out if investment was a thing that I wanted to do or that I could do, it's almost like it's hidden behind this curtain, right? So like people don't really know what to expect. At least the incubator that I was in, there is this idea of like, I go in and I have to make a great impression one time, and then all of a sudden I'm like going to get money. So I appreciate all of you bringing some insight into, no, it's a long-time relationship. No, you really have to know your investor and what kinds of things they're investing in. And Alejandra, really knowing like what is the problem you're solving? What are you testing? What is the work that you're putting into it? So every time that you share these things, you're making it easier for people out there to understand how to navigate this world. So I want to thank you for that. What is the change? And we're reaching the end. So if y'all have any questions, feel free to start popping those in the chat. But what is the change that you want to see? How could this be better? If we had a magic wand to change something, how could this be better?
I think for me, what I would love to see, especially with the experience specific to raising capital and specific to, to Latinx and minority founders. I know from what I've seen, I see a lot of capital ready to be deployed as a follow-on. And what we need is a strong lead investor, many strong lead investors that are willing to be that first check. That is what is going to really change the game. There is a lot of capital out there, but there's a lot of capital waiting for some things to happen first. And I feel like where a lot of startups find the most resistance is that first check. If we could get more people coming to the table, ready, excited to launch that first check, then we're going to see some big shifts.
That's a really good point, Stephanie. So for me, I think it's important that we, meaning diverse entrepreneurs, have the same opportunity to succeed as others have been allowed to fail. And so what that means is, and I don't want to call out the company, but if you on Twitter, you saw it, where a company received, $1.8 billion and have now had to close down. Imagine how many companies, diverse teams and entrepreneurs could have taken that capital and put it to work right away, building and scaling their companies. And so I think the narrative needs to be that, the dynamics in our country in terms of the way we're shaped, it's changing. And so either we're going to be serious about moving the needle, in terms of diverse entrepreneurship and writing these checks, to Stephanie's point, we're going to be having these same conversations. So for me, it's allow us to succeed. We're not looking to fail. We've come into this space because we feel like we have something important. Entrepreneurs have built something that they feel like, they can scale. Give them the opportunity by, writing the check, right? Give me the opportunity by writing me the check so that I can write the check to the entrepreneurs. And so in my opinion, I think that's what needs to change. And I'm hoping that changes.
I will also add a couple of things there. Those are great points. I will add more collaboration, right? We have all done amazing things. And I think that through collaboration, we can do much more. For instance, if you've done, if you've gone from starting a company to exit, share that with others. You've used not just many different tools and resources, investors, you've gone through that process already. So share that with others. And I think that would just help accelerate, there are many companies that are just starting. And sometimes they start by, I don't even know what tools to use to reach out to customers. Something so simple like that, anyone can suggest, why don't you try, X application? Same thing with investors, right? You may not be the right investor, but at least say, why don't you reach out to this person? So I think, especially nowadays that we're going through such hard times, the current state of the world is very challenging at this point. But also I can see that there are many opportunities. And I think that more than ever, now we need to work together. And that's just not sharing ideas, resources, but really it's just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and remembering that you actually went through that process. So why don't you share with us, a few names, do a few referrals in LinkedIn, just help others. I think that will help accelerate so many other things. That's something I would definitely like to encourage and change.
Mm-hmm. I want to just piggyback on that because I really love that, Alejandra. So the company that I just invested in, while we've not closed our fund, but I did not want to see her fail, right? So I started immediately sending her to other to other funds, not only in Atlanta, not only in Georgia, but across the country, because I was like, I'm sure there's someone out there who could, be interested, who would be interested in this company. And she got a check from a local fund before I wrote mine, right? And so that's what it's about. It's about collaboration, making sure that if I can't do it, there's one of my peers who may be willing to do it. And so I really like that point that you made. I think that's highly, highly important in all of our work.
And it's so important, I think, to have diverse people leading these funds, opening the doors, giving opportunities. I mean, an experience that I had is I met an investor who wasn't a good fit, but he just turned out to be an amazing advocate for me, from, just helping me get into conferences, to helping me meet people. And it is this long-term relationship that he has invested in me, no matter kind of what I'm doing. So it is so much about relationship, about collaboration, about helping each other. I would like to ask y'all, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you're like, I want to say this before this panel ends? Just want to give you an opportunity to bring that up.
So I will start because, I'm not shy, as everyone can tell. So I want to say that less than 1%, and everybody knows this data, of VC dollars went to Latinx companies. On the flip side of that, 8% of companies, what was the number? 8% of the founder population grew, I think, in 2018. That's a disconnect, right? If we're not getting the investor dollars and we're growing at these large numbers, how are we going to solve that disconnect? And so I think it's incumbent upon me to try to figure that out, as well as a VC. But I think the investor community needs to take a really hard look at the fact that the dollars are just, the companies are there, the dollars aren't there. That's a big problem. And how do we try to solve that problem? And I think it's just important for us to know that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
All right. Yeah, I will say a couple of things. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Blanca Catalina. So if you are actually online and you're looking for a mentor, she's amazing. Sometimes we tend to look at, the best CEO, the best founder. It has to be someone who has great, name it. Blanca is not just a great friend, but I would say she's just so willing to share so many resources. So if you're online, I think Blanca is online as well. So you should be able to find her name and just reach out to her. She's a great source of knowledge.
Yes, and Blanca has an incredible company too, so y'all check her out and hire her for all the things. So my last question is, if you could go back, and this wasn't in the questions you were sent, so I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. So if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice, maybe 5 years ago, to the younger version of yourself, to the person that was just getting started, just trying to understand how this thing works, what would you say to yourself?
I think I wouldn't have been so hard on myself. I mean, I would have said, girl, it's going to be all right. You're going to be all right. Just as simple as that. Just keep working hard with your head down. It'll be all right.
Yeah, I think to that, I think to that point, an element of just like, you are figuring it out even when you feel like you have nothing figured out. Like it's all still moving in the right direction. And which would have kept me from being so hard on myself in so many moments, for sure.
The other thing,
that's real. I'm hearing that.
Another thing I will add is to just do it. Sometimes we tend to overthink, but I've never met anyone that said like, well, I'm glad that I didn't do it. Instead it's a no regret that you just have to take. And I would say, just do it. If you're thinking of something, if you're thinking you want to solve a need, a pain point, do it. Do it, try it. What's the worst can happen? It won't work. Okay, great, next. Just do it now, because once we start thinking it, it's just like, okay, but I don't have the money and I don't have the skills. And then 5 years later, you haven't done anything. You're still in the same place. So I'll just, say, do it.
Amen.
Amazing. Okay, y'all. So we're going to move into questions. I saw one kind of at the beginning from Brian. So I'm going to read the question, and whoever wants to answer, you can start answering. So the question is, what draws you to investing time and or money into a startup? Is it product? Is it the founder passion or something else? How do you identify those diamonds in the rough?
It is definitely the founder. For me, anyway. I am a founder first profile person, right? The founder who has that fire in their belly, they discovered a problem, they're going to go out and solve it. They are the ones. They've decided that they're the ones that could solve it. They have that passion, that persistence. They don't mind pivoting. Like COVID should have been an opportunity to pivot, and seeing that they have, and it's in their deck, of that sort of stuff. And so for me, it's a founder. The company comes secondary to the founder because the founder has to be able to take that company through whatever challenges that they they may have. And if they don't show that if I don't see that, then you can have excuse me, you can have this awesome company. I may not ever get to know about that company because I just can't see it in you to carry it through. So that's how sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice. How we sort of operate as a fund. I look at the entrepreneur, decide, okay, we want to take it to the next step. Say comes in and basically determines if this is a good investment or not. And so for me, it's always about the entrepreneur.
And is there, as a follow-up question, is there something specifically that you look at? Is it like they've been working on this problem for a long time? They write a lot about it. You know, they have a million tweets about it. Like, what is the thing?
I think that's the least attractive thing to me in terms of tweeting about it and being so focused on your company. And so for me, it is the fact that it's the problem solver in them, because I consider myself to be a problem solver. So give you an example of the investment we just made. Her mom was always having kitchen fires. The last one almost burnt the house down. So she was like, no, I gotta solve this, but I'm gonna solve it through technology. And so it's those type of entrepreneurs who may have had some sort of personal experience, or they saw this pain point and decided that they were the ones to solve it. So it's that sort of thing, and it comes out in their personality. Not everybody is the same, right? In terms of being, very like me, talkative and can kind of explain it. Some of them are just kind of quiet, but I love the ones who are out there solving a pain point and telling me why they're the ones that should be doing it. It's just that simple.
I love it. Your story is so important.
Absolutely. Exactly.
And to continue on with that, I completely agree. It is the founder. And something that I often share with my founders is it's not just what you're doing, but how you're doing it. That's one reason. That's something I really love watching as I'm seeing investor pitches, is you get to see how a person thinks, how they communicate. You get to see how they are leading their organization and how they show up to the opportunities in front of them. So much of that like intuitive connection between a founder and an investor is not about the what and the like surface level premise. It's about like the way that they're moving through the world, the way that they are attacking this problem. And someone says, I just want to be a part of this. So much support comes to you. And in so many more ways than just capital, when people connect to how you show up to the task at hand.
Incredible. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? I'll give you a second to type this up. Until then, I will ask you, where can people find you? How can they connect with you? How can they support your work?
Sure. So we're Zane Venture Fund on all platforms. And I'm Shyla Nieves Bernie on all platforms. Our website is zane.vc. You can also connect with us there.
You can find out, we keep doing that.
Go ahead.
You can find out more about me and my work in the world of capital at poweredbyverve.com. I have some training events coming up. I also run a free Facebook group for female founders and thought leaders. And the link to that can be found on poweredbyverve.com as well. And my handle is at @TheStephanieDiaz on all platforms.
All right, and for me, it's quite simple. Find me on LinkedIn. That's the best social media channel, I would say, that I used. So LinkedIn, just type my name, or you can do alejandra.park. You can find me there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. I see no more questions coming in. So maybe we'll just get off a little bit early and head to lunch. But I wanted to thank everybody for being here, for having this important conversation. I hope that everybody can see how diverse that the Latinx population is. We come from different backgrounds, different languages, different races. And so it's really, really important to keep that in mind, that we are not a culture that has one look. I also want to reiterate what y'all talked about taking action, and being yourself, sharing your story, sharing that passion for the thing that you're doing, being smart by using Lean Startup, and making sure that you're learning as you build and you're not just building blindly. And thank you so much. It's so excited to continue these conversations.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Brian.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.